Hello, everybody. In this presentation, you will get some relevant information about what is cultural mediation. So you will get some information about what is a cultural mediator, what is not a cultural mediator, and what a cultural mediator might be, especially in educational settings. According to one definition I provided in one recent publication, cultural mediation is a necessary service in order to provide interacting subjects with an effective communication across languages, and in order to facilitate the access to and the exercise of emerging bilinguals' language rights in contexts where their heritage language is not the dominant one. So as you can see, mediation is a very important process, and it is also a very important service in different social contexts in order to, first of all, encourage translingual interaction, and secondly, but also very important, to encourage the right exercise of language rights and rights in general. And of course, as regards the different domains involved in cultural mediation, we can see that there is an interdisciplinary approach towards these trend of studies, as well as towards this process involving interpersonal communication. First of all, of course, because as I will show you, a mediator is first of all an expert of interpersonal communication rather than an expert of language in general, or just an expert of cultures. Of course, mediation is also a matter of language policy, because, as I said before, mediation is a very important service in order to provide interactants with the right exercise of language rights. And the ethnographic dimension in mediation is very important because, as you know, mediation is a very situated process and a very situational one. So an ethnographic approach towards the mediation is very important, both from a research point of view and from an empirical point of view. And of course, multilingualism and interculturality are involved in mediation studies, because multilingualism is one of the main features of mediation, as well as interculturality. So the capacity, the ability of mediators to switch from one language system to another one, and to move across different sociocultural models. And just to facilitate your access to the professional profile of mediators, I will show you 3 slides, one about what is a cultural mediator, one about what is not a cultural mediator, and the last one about what a cultural mediator might be. So in my view of mediators and of mediation in general, regardless of the different social contexts where mediation is provided, a mediator is, first of all, as I said before, an expert of interpersonal communication. But symbolically, he or she is also a constructor of bridges rather than a bridge between cultures. We often read about mediation like something which is a bridge between cultures, but I argue that mediators are constructors of bridges, and these bridges are not constructed just by mediators, but also by interactants with their communicative responsibility when they interact with each other. Of course, a mediator, as a good ethnographer, is also a facilitator for a local production of sense, because, as I said before, mediation is a very situated process. So it is important to stress on this situational feature of mediation. And of course, a mediator is also an expert in the management of situated interactional dynamics and language practices. As we said before, language practices are something very concrete, are something very practical, very situated, and mediators have the ability to move across language practices in a situational perspective, rather than moving inside the language systems in an abstract way. And mediators are also explorers of possibilities, also according to this situational feature of their role. Last but not least, a mediator is also a facilitator for the exercise of language rights, and this is a matter of language policy, both at a bottom-up level, but also at a top-down level, as highlighted by different documents of language policy at transnational level in the European domain, like the CFR Companion Volume. What is not a cultural mediator? In my view, a cultural mediator is not only an interpreter. I mean, cultural mediators are also interpreters, so they move across languages from a translation point of view, but they're also something more. They are also experts of sociocultural models, and they are experts of language practices, so they are not just interpreters. And for the same reasons, I argue that a mediator is not only an expert of cultures, because a mediator is also an expert of interaction between people, not just an expert of sociocultural models. So I mean that the cultural part is one part of the whole, but there are also other parts which are strictly intertwined with interaction in general, rather than intercultural interaction. And a mediator is for sure not a language facilitator, because in our view of language facilitation, a language facilitator is someone who knows strategies and ways to facilitate the access to a second language from the point of view of a second language learner. So a mediator is not this. A mediator is an expert of communication across languages, and language facilitation has pretty much to do with L2 acquisition rather than with intercultural communication and cross-linguistic communication. And very important, sometimes mediators are conceived as defense lawyers or supporters of one of the two or more subjects involved in a cross-linguistic interaction. I argue that this view is very distorted, because in my view, a mediator is in the middle, as the word says, from its lexical and semantic origin, and we must not conceive mediators as subjects staying on one side rather than on another side, because a mediator is a facilitator of communication between subjects. So the view of defense lawyers or supporters of one side is false and distorted, in my view. And I added here a further slide in which I brought what a cultural mediator might be, in my view, synthesizing some perspectives on mediation which have so far been neglected, or which have been overlooked by mainstream research, and which I would like to focus the attention on. A mediator, in my view, might be a subject who makes interactants more responsible from a communicative point of view. Research has so far stressed a lot on mediators as in their roles of people carrying out mediation services, but research, both in applied linguistics and in conversation analysis, and also in ethnographic studies, has overlooked the role of interactants dealing with mediators. And in my view, it's very important to stress the point on the responsibility that interactants have when they interact through the use of a mediator. So they can be responsible from a communication point of view, and they can do their best in order to interact with each other despite the presence of a mediator. So, and the mediator himself or herself can facilitate this role of interactants as responsible subjects in order to facilitate the mutual access to meaning making and to language practices. And from an educational point of view, and I will extend this view in a further PPT that I'm going to present. A mediator might be a support to multilingual education. So, of course, a mediator cannot substitute a teacher in multilingual education and in education in general, but he or she can act in class with in classes with plural multilingual repertoires in order to facilitate the exchange between languages in class and the use of the whole repertoires at school and in educational contexts in general. So a mediator can be a very good resource in order to facilitate multilingual education. And last but not least, a mediator can be also a deconstructor of language and culture-based stereotypes and prejudices. So it is a very important role in my view, because people interacting and belonging to different sociocultural models can have their ideas of cultures in general and mainstream cultures of the others, and mediators acting in a situational context, they can facilitate the process of avoiding culture-based stereotypes and prejudices like generalized ideas of the others, and they can do it because they are, besides being experts of communication, they have to be experts of cultures and intercultural communication in general, and in particular, they should adopt a non-essentialist lens in order to stress on intercultural communication. So these might be the roles of mediators which have been so far maybe overlooked or neglected a little bit by mainstream research, but which at the same time should deserve more attention by research and practice in general. So, if you want to know something more about the specific roles of cultural mediators in multilingual educational settings, don't forget to watch the screencast, The Roles of Cultural Mediation in Educational Contexts. So, through these screencasts, you can expand your knowledge about the applications of cultural mediation to educational contexts characterized by plural multilingual repertoires. Thank you very much for watching this video.